Latin texts on the internet usually look like this, but I like to change them to look something like this so that my students can make marks on them and I can make marks on them as I want to. If you'd like to do that for your students, I would like to show you how to do that as quickly as I can. Okay, the first thing you do is you go to Latin Library, wherever you're going to get things, and grab the Latin text that you want, and then you stick it into a Word document. That's what I prefer to use, Word documents. Once it's in a Word document, I notice that size 18 is pretty large for what I want. So I take this and change it to size 14. And I just think 14 is a better size to work with. Then I work with the uh, margins a little bit. I could have done this to start with and make them a little bit narrower, however it looks. Here's the secret. I turn this text into a table, and then in between I have blank lines that kids can write in as ever they want to. So if I start out to make a table out of a Word document, I start by putting a star at the beginning of each line because these texts usually don't have asterisks in them. Okay, so now all the asterisks are at the beginning of each line. I then do Control A to highlight it all. Then I come up to this insert, and I want to insert a table use this to, and then what I want to do is convert the text to table. A little dialog box comes up like this. Way down at the bottom, I select something called Other, and I put an asterisk into that little box. Then up here where it says number of columns, it always picks some weird large number. I just want one column to my table, and I go ahead and say OK, and it changes everything already into a table where each line has its own piece. Now I can go up to the layout and insert a line below down the whole thing. And there I have a line below each one. Now, I like to make the English, and then I go ahead and get rid of the top row because I don't need that one. All right. And in between, I like to make the Latin a different font, and I like to use the Calibri font and make it only size 10. That way you can write more English than you do the Latin underneath. So I take that, and then I click the Format Painter twice. So it's, and then I go to each line and click. And as long as that Format Painter is highlighted gray, it will go ahead and make every line that I click on that Calibri 10. If you click on the wrong line, you end up changing that too. You have to go back and fix it. But right now I'm just quickly going through and doing all those lines. Right there. And now at this point, I can write whatever I want to in between every line. I'm going to undo the Format Painter. And I could write whatever I want to in any of these things. I can write down meanings of words. I can write down notes that I want, or I can write nothing and my students could write something. Something I like to do to finish, when I'm finished making my notes and everything, I highlight everything with this little box here. And then I come up here to their borders and make no border. That way it looks like there's just a space in between that you can write in. Now you can't just make something double spaced and it comes out like this. You have to make a table to make this work out that way. All right. Well, that's one thing I like to do. I'll show you another here in just a minute if I can get this done. Now that's all well and good, but I want to take this one more step from this. I want to give a column to the right where kids can write in their translation as they go. So in order to do that, I take my regular text that I've made into Georgia 14. I like Georgia 14. Come over here and grab this right margin, and I bring it over about halfway, what I think looks good. It doesn't have to be halfway. It could be more than halfway because the English is going to take up less space than the Latin is. Anyway, once I have it set there, then I go through and make all my stars like I did before. And I'll stop it now and come back to it after I've made all my stars. All right, so now I have the stars put onto the first of every line, and like I did before, I do Control A to highlight everything. Go up here to the Insert. I'll insert a table. This will be Convert Text to Table, just like I did before. I've clicked the other and put a star in there. And the number of columns, again, I have to change that to 1 because I only want 1 column in this. And I click OK. Now I have each line in a different column. It's not quite the way I need it to be, though, so I'll go back up to the top and just highlight the table with this little arrow. That's the easiest way to do it. Put this little black arrow up here and do that. At that point, I can take this little cursor that I had put over there and I'll stick it at the end again. That's the important part of this. Once I've done that, I can then bring over this line to any point I want. So I make it so that it doesn't go too far. If it goes too far, then it starts putting something onto the second line and it's jumbled up. So I just put 1 like that. All right, once it's there, I then say insert to the right. Insert to the right in the Layout tab. Now it's all messed up. It's not the way I like it, so I'm going to stick this over the edge again and stick this one over to the edge as far as I want to go. I like to make them as big as I can. And then this middle one I put over there till all the lines are single lines. Nothing is bleeding over to a second line like that. Okay. Now I'll get rid of this top one because they always make an extra one at the top. You don't need. And then let's see. If there are paragraphs to this, and this one's all one paragraph, but if there are paragraphs to this and I want to make sections to it, I might go like this much and make a section. I'll go up to Merge Cells and make that into 1, and then I'll see if I can do the other parts the same way. Okay, there you go. And I'll merge those cells. Now, I wouldn't normally do that with this particular one because it's all one paragraph. But if I had more than one paragraph, I would definitely split it into 2 sections. Now I come and do the same thing I did before, where I do Insert Below. There we go. All the way down. Let's see. It's almost there. Okay, there we go. It's got some extras here that I don't like. But anyway, and again, you highlight the one in between. I like to change this to a different font so that the English looks different from the Latin. I make it Calibri 10. Little small thing because it doesn't have to be bigger than that. Click twice on Format Painter, and then I can do this. And now I'm making each line in between a smaller font. Let's go down here. I'll just keep this going here. Right. Now when things bleed onto the next page, try to make sure that we don't have the English line, the Latin line on one page and then the English on the next, but I have to scroll to the next page to see something. But it looks like here things are pretty well done. They've got the line, Latin and English all the way through. All right, now that's pretty much where it needs to be. I'm going to add one more thing here. If you want to put this as a Google Doc, it's better to make it first as a Word doc if you can, and then change it to a Google Doc. So I'll give you an idea of that in just a minute. But right now, okay, so now you have your Word document with your place for annotations on the left. And on the right, students can write just whatever they feel like. Now that font is Georgia 14, they could write their translation in as they go if they want to. Now, to put this into a Google Doc, the first thing you do is you highlight everything with Control A. Okay? Then you copy, Control C. And you think, oh, I'm going to make this into a Google Doc. But Google messes things up, I'll tell you. So let me see. I'm going to go back here and go to my Google Drive. And let's say I want to put it here. I want to put a new Google Doc. That's a little extra thing I have. I'm going to call this my test because give it a title. Okay, there's that. All right. Now I go ahead and make the file, the page size to be at least on the left and right, to be as small as I can possibly make it. So I make it 0.2 because you can get away with 0.2. I can do 0.5, and I'll put a certain color on it, like a light color. Let's make it purple. I don't know. Purple doesn't always work well, but let's see. That looks okay. All right. Now, so now that I've got it here, I'm going to do Control V to copy everything in. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot something. I left out a step, so I'm going to take that back. Google always thinks I want to use Arial, but I have Georgia. Whatever text that you use, that's what you want to use. And I'd used Georgia 14. So you have to change that first. I don't know why. Now you can push Control V, and it comes like this. But Google messes things up. It's got odd colors on it this time. I don't even know why that's there. So I've got to highlight, and Google Docs is kind of funny to way they highlight too. You've got to highlight kind of manually. You can't just do a Control A and highlight inside a table for some reason. I'm going to highlight. This gets a little bit cumbersome. I don't care for it too much. Let's see. Okay, and then we do that. All right. First thing I see is they've got words going way off the table. So I'm going to pull this triangle here over inside the margins, and now everything's in a pretty good place. I'm going to take this line and put it over here because I like to make it as wide as I possibly can. And then here's the weird thing that Google Docs do. They give a weird format to this. So I'm going to format this table, go down to the table properties, and there's something called a minimum row height. I always make it 0.2 instead of whatever they have. Cell padding, I don't even like that. I think I could make a 0.1, but I'm going to make a 0.2 to keep it there. All right, that's good. And background color, we'll keep it as none. Table border, we'll keep it in none. That'll be okay for now. Okay. Oh, it's disappeared. There it is. I think I also have to go over here this time and tell it, oh, I want single spaced. Everything's single spaced. Coming out odd to me. But anyway, that kind of gets the idea across. You can see that the Latin is much wider than the English is, but that's okay because the English is going to take up less space than the Latin does. In between, you still have Calibri 10 like you're supposed to have. I don't know why these are highlighted with white. That doesn't usually happen to me. Let's see something if I take off the highlights and say, hey, I don't want anything highlighted. Come up here to the highlighting tool and say no highlights. Now that made it normal. It's bothering me that this is it's not exactly it's got so much space on top of this text. I'm going to see if I can fix that real quick, and if I can't, then I won't worry about it. Let's see. I format the table properties. 2.2 by 2. Everything looks like the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Oh, it's got extra spacing. So I don't know why it did this. Maybe because my original had spacing in it. I don't know. I'm going to add this extra bit. And come over here to the spacing tool. And it's already on single, but I want to do custom spacing and make sure everything's a 0. Now it comes out a little bit better. Now you can't really, and then what I like to do is, I don't know, I like to make every place that students write a yellow. I've decided that, and my students know whatever's yellow, they can type into that box. So I highlighted all the right-hand column, and then I go to Format, the table, down to the table properties, and then I say the cell background color, I like to use yellow. So I'm going to make it yellow. Table border, now that I know that I got purple, I'm going to use a purple table border. It's just something I like to do. There you go. Now, my students know that wherever they see yellow, they can write in there. So they can start writing whatever they like. You can write whatever you like here in the in-between spots if you want to put in words that you think they might not know. Like you have to use your space bar and get yourself over there. Divided. And then you might look at this quorum and say, they might be confused about that. So you see, of which, help them out with that. One, they have inhabit. Another. And you can put as many of these helps as you want, or no helps at all, and have the students look it all up, and they can keep track of the words that they have to look up by putting them in here. Later on, you can give them the text unadulterated and see if they can read it just from Latin, because they've worked through it this way. I can put a title up here. I like to make everything Georgia, so I'm going to make this Georgia. That's because I like to work with Georgia. You might do New Times Roman, and that's fine too, if you like. I make them big and put that in the middle. So I do that way. At this point, you can bring up your table if you want to and make it take less space. You can make this top part come up a little bit, however you want. Down here, bring up this. You can bring this up too, but this is not cooperating with me today. All right. So that's it. Let's see. No. All right, so that's it. You now have a Google Doc where you can put in annotations as you would like. And that's everything here.